CTV News with Ken Shaw and Andrea Case.
Well, a fight for those who don't have homes. Demand for more shelter space made its way inside City Hall before this morning's council meeting.
There's only one answer here, and it's to open the armories.
The Ontario Coalition Against Poverty calling for the city to open up armories to provide immediate shelter for the city's homeless. The group also wants to see at least 1,000 new shelter beds right across the city. It says the mayor's recent announcement of 400 new beds just doesn't go far enough. Time ago, we showed you a protest at City Hall. Advocates saying homelessness is at crisis levels in the city. They want more shelter space. CTV's Colin DeMello joins us now live at City Hall. And Colin, along with a call for shelter spaces, council also received a plea from a Canadian-born film star.
Yeah, there's quite a lot happening here at City Council today. Ken, I'll touch upon that film star first. It was Kiefer Sutherland who is asking Toronto for more space for TV and film production in the city. They say that they are running out of space here, and because of that, Toronto is losing a lot of money. But first, let's start with the Ontario Coalition Against Poverty. They're asking for more shelter spaces in the city of Toronto as we head into some colder winter months, because they say we are at a critical point right now, and people are basically sleeping either right beside each other or on top of each other in some of these overcrowded shelters. Advocates for the homeless demonstrated inside City Hall today, calling for a solution to a growing crisis.
Since then, it's escalated to always 50, and most nights more than 50, up to 67 people sleeping on the floor.
With a 30% increase in use this year, shelter spaces, they say, are overcrowded. People are choosing to sleep in parks and under bridges instead.
We've already have a situation where the number of people living in these shelters, an overcrowded situation, is affecting their mental health, and it just won't work. It's just, you can't overcrowd people. You just can't be stacking people on top of each other like this.
Thousands of Torontonians signed a petition asking the mayor to make a request of the federal government to open Fort York and the Moss Park Armory for people who need shelter over the winter.
These armories, by opening up these armories tomorrow, what you could do is you could relieve the pressure right now that's going on in these shelters. I can give you countless stories in terms of Peter Street, 40 to 50 people sleeping on chairs and on the floor, concrete floor.
29.2.
This council meeting will also focus on Toronto's $2 billion a year movie and TV production industry, with a high-profile name asking for more production space.
Hi, I'm Kiefer Sutherland on the Toronto film set of Designated Survivor.
Members of the councillors to reserve a portion of the Portlands for film and TV studios.
Respectfully, my message to Mayor John Tory and his fellow councillors is to say yes to the Portlands and ensure that Toronto remains a film-friendly city.
City Council will vote work at this meeting. It is a massive proposal for residential development, parks, and commercial space.
I also support the call he made for a vibrant mixed use, that it's not all going to be residences, which is the kinds of neighborhoods we're going to create across the city.
Producers say Toronto could stand to lose millions over the next few years. It could get worse over the next few years, because some producers say when the mouth of the Don River is rerouted by 2019, at least 3 production studios close. One Toronto-based producer told CTV News yesterday that because of the tightness this year alone,
Thank you, Colin.
It may not be too cold yet, but winter is on its way, and that leaves people on the streets in grave danger. Right now, it's relatively mild, and still our city shelters are nearing capacity. Advocates and the mayor agree on one thing: there needs to be more beds, but the two sides are far apart on how to do that. Let's bring in Alicia Sound, who's at City Hall, where councillors were supposed to debate opening up the Armories Alley. That will officially be discussed tomorrow, but the unofficial talks about it proved fiery today.
Absolutely. Mayor John Tory announced his plan on Sunday to add 400 shelter spaces to the city's already very crowded network. The overflow, which would include families, would be relocated to living in motels temporarily. Activists say the much better solution would be to open the city's armories to take people in those facilities instead of, as they describe it, shoehorning people in to shelters right now. The activists today marched their opinions right to the mayor's office. A protest meets hot table. Today's setup outside City Hall provided a little help and a lot of noise.
Provide whatever money we need to deal with these crises. If we need 1,000, if we need 2,000, if we need 3,000 new beds, we'll build them.
Street nurses, outreach workers, and the homeless themselves, all here to pressure Mayor John Tory to open the city's armories as shelters.
We are the ones that know these issues. And we know that when shelters remain crowded, we end up with outbreaks. We end up with tuberculosis outbreaks. We end up with violence. We end up with bedbug infested shelters. We end up with a strep outbreak that lasted 18 months at Seton House.
Most of the activists here think Tory's plan to add 400 shelter spaces to our existing shelters is like shoehorning people into an already overburdened system. On Metro Morning today, the mayor rejected that.
And here's the bottom line.
You're very angry about this. You're angry about this,
no,
too.
I'm not. I'm very passionate about it because I want to help. And I stepped forward with a plan to help. It's a plan that's going to work, and it's a plan that also has the stamp of approval of our experts that we employ. I do. I get angry at the fact that there's sort of an orthodoxy that a small group of people, suggest that it's their way or no way. And I just don't accept that.
Tory's experts, he says, flagged some serious concerns about just how suitable armories are for taking people in.
It's not a building that's sitting empty. It's a building that's in use by the Canadian Defence Forces, and you have to put in what I call security arrangements between the two groups of people that are using it. Some of the facilities for people to use are inadequate.
Council won't decide what it will do until tomorrow.
It's unbearable.
But take it from someone like Rayla Munoz, who lives in a Toronto shelter, relief is needed badly.
Recently we added bunk beds into the shelter where I'm staying at so we can fit more people in. It's unbearable. There's a lot of mixed emotions, there's a lot of tension, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of uncertainties, there's a lot of feeling of I guess in a way, feeling disassociated.
And helping people get back up on their feet goes beyond temporary housing.
What's the next step once we get the shelters? What is the next step that needs to be looked at?
In that Metro Morning interview, Mayor John Tory said on top of providing beds and adding the amount of shelter spaces, he says he is committed to getting housing providers to the table to discuss the very real possibility of offering units to people who are transitioning out of shelters. Dwight.
Thank you, Ali.
Held at Nathan Phillips Square today, ahead of the first day of City Council's final meeting of the year. The Ontario Coalition Against Poverty held a rally to speak out against Mayor Tory's plan to add 400 shelter beds. And they're calling on the city to use federal armories as temporary shelters for the homeless instead, saying it would immediately add 1,000 new spaces for those in need.
Our staff are run off their feet. The crowded conditions make people cranky, and it's difficult to live together. We've had people living at Sistering, a drop-in, for over a year because there's no place for them to go. So we have one shower for all the women that come to Sistering. We have donated clothes. We have 3 meals a day and soup and sandwiches overnight. So they're comfortable and they're safe, but they're jammed in like sardines.
Mayor Tory says decisions have to be made based on research and facts.
What I'm going to try to do is to make these decisions in a responsible manner based on the advice received from our experts in the professional public service and from outsiders that I've called in to help me. And what we're doing so far is consistent with their advice, and I think is going to make a significant difference to making sure that this winter people are not displaced or left to fend for themselves, and that we'll be looking at the longer term and trying to do more as fast as we can.
The debate on Mayor Tory's proposal to add 400 more shelter beds will take place when council meets again tomorrow.